Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today we have a treat. We have, I would think, probably the youngest guest we've ever had on this show so far, and we've done over 300 episodes. We have Zoey Rosenberg here, and Zoey is 17 years old. She is an animal rights activist. In fact, she started Happy Hen Animal Sanctuary at the age of 11 and has now saved nearly 1,000 lives. And so we're really excited to have her here. She is the daughter of Louis Rosenberg. If you remember, we just recently interviewed Dr. Louis Rosenberg and talked about unanimous AI. So this is his daughter. And so Zoe, welcome, Leaders of Transformation. We're excited that you're here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
It is a pleasure, and I'm so excited to hear what you have to say. You've been, as your dad said, look, if you want to know about how to start a movement, talk to my daughter, because she is probably the most passionate person I've ever met and the most committed to it. And this is the series that we're in. We're in the series of how to start a movement. So our listeners are listening because maybe they have a movement, they want to grow a movement, and they want to learn some tips, or they're just literally starting off and trying to figure out how to navigate these waters because they want to make a difference.
Yeah.
They see a cause, something that they don't agree with, or something that they're passionate about, that there's a gap, and they want to fill that gap. And so I'm really excited about being able to provide some tools and insights for them to be able to do that so that they can impact literally millions of people around the world. So with that in mind, let's start off with, how did you actually become an activist at age 11 when most kids are really just playing outside or doing video games or whatever?
Yeah, well, when I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness. This kind of forced me to mature a lot faster than everyone else and to really recognize the issues in our world. And
There's the hen in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of was like the first thing that disconnected me from other people my age. And then when I was 9 years old, my family got chickens and I fell in love with them. They became my best friends in the whole world. And I wanted nothing more than to spend time with these chickens. And I realized that people all over the world don't see chickens as individuals, don't even see chickens as creatures who feel pain, and that billions of them are suffering behind closed doors. And I learned about NSW Hen Rescue in North South Wales, Australia, which is an organization that is rescuing hens from factory farms. And I was so inspired when I saw the work that they're doing. And I wanted to do that too. So I emailed them and I asked, how can I start an animal rescue here in the United States doing similar work what you're doing? And they emailed me back and they gave me all sorts of advice and helped me. And then I asked my mom, can we start a chicken rescue? And she said, maybe. And I was expecting a flat out no. So I was so excited she didn't say no. And I got to work and started dedicating all my time to making it happen.
That is fantastic. Now, whatever is dinging, can we silence that for now? Because that's instant messenger probably. And
yeah. I just closed it. Hopefully that stops it.
Okay. All right. So that is awesome. And what great support from your mom to say yes when she's now. So where did you moved, right, to start this sanctuary then? Or was it on the property? Did you do it on the property that you already lived on?
Yeah, so we actually, like a year before I decided I wanted to start the rescue, we had moved to a property with 40 acres. So it kind of gave us this, opportunity to make it happen because we had the land. So we just had to start raising money to build the infrastructure to start saving lives.
That is amazing. Now, age 14, so I searched on Wikipedia and learned a little bit more about you. And you started off, of course, as at 11, and then at age 14, you received some national press attention, and that was you were at a Dodgers game, and so you were protesting animals there. And then when you were 15, you gave a TED talk, and when you were I don't know how old this would have been. You're 16. You were actually one of the 4 finalists nationally for PETA's 13th annual Young Animal Activist of the Year award. So, and I can go on, right? And even till up to date, you were in this year, actually 2019, when we're recording, you were awarded with the Paul McCartney Veg Advocate Award for your work as a young activist. And so a lot of accolades at a young age. So how do you handle all of that attention and be able to manage that with you're still in high school and, and having a social life and doing the things that you do?
Yeah, so I do school from home through a charter school program here locally. So I only have to go in to school once a week and just meet with my teacher, and that basically provides me to have a flexible schedule to do all the things that I'm doing, and travel the country to give speeches about the things that I'm passionate about. And it's definitely it's a double-edged sword, having so much attention and kind of such a positive and negative reputation around my name. I often joke that I'm the most hated person in my entire county, because I get so much hate online from the agriculture community. I get death threats. I can't even go to the fair without getting swarmed by farmers, threatening to beat me up. And that's something that's always in the back of my mind when I'm leaving my house, is that, there are people who I'm going to see when I leave the house who are going to recognize me and hate me. But I also get people who stop me and, thank me for my work for the animals. And, at the end of the day, I don't even care whether people hate me, or don't even know who I am. As long as I'm making a difference, I'll be satisfied, and I'll be happy.
Wow. Well, it's quite the life that you've chosen,
Yeah.
you really got to be committed to what you're doing. That's when is when people are saying, we want to, we want to kill you because of what you believe. That's when what you want to, what you want to choose to spend your life on. And so, wow. So I was going to ask you, what is your biggest obstacle? Is that your biggest obstacle, or is there something else that comes up?
I don't know that that's my biggest obstacle. I think that maybe the biggest obstacle is honestly just society's general reluctance to look animal agriculture straight in the face. Because as soon as I start talking and people realize I'm talking about the animal agriculture industry, people, immediately shut down. They don't want to hear about it, because they know that whatever comes next might make them feel like they have to change something about themselves or something that their parents taught them. And, it's just something that's so taboo. And I think, it's just hard to get across to people that I'm not attacking you. I'm just talking about something that's happening in our world.
Right. And so what is let's speak to your platform as to what it is that you do believe and how you're going about getting the word out about that.
Yeah, well, so what I believe, honestly, I don't think should be very controversial. What I believe is that, all animals deserve to be safe, happy, and free from harm. And, factory farming should be illegal, slaughterhouses should be illegal, all of these things that are causing massive amount of cruelty and suffering towards some of the most innocent beings on this planet. None of that should be happening. And instead, we should be helping these animals and giving them the lives that they deserve. And so kind of the motto at my animal sanctuary is sanctuaries, not slaughterhouses, because we want a world of compassion and not violence.
Got it. So obviously you're vegan.
Yes.
Okay. So when you go out and speak to this, you are congruent with your message, obviously. And you're looking for people to buy into this vision, right? And what you want to create. How do you engage people in that process so that they're not just following what you're doing, but that they're actually getting involved, right?
Yeah.
There's a big difference, right? It's like, awesome, Zoe, you go out and do what you need to do, right? Or what you believe in. And then there's another whole other thing to be able to get people to say, I see what you're saying, and I actually want to put my life on the line with you to make this happen.
Yeah, for sure. And, live in a nation of animal lovers. Like, you know, if you go out into the city and you ask a random person, do you love animals? They're probably going to say yes. You care about animals? They're probably going to say yes. Are you against animal cruelty? They're probably going to say yes. But at the end of the day, are they doing anything? Probably not. And that's kind of, you know, where it gets tricky, is you actually have to get people to take that step and do something that, you know, might even make them lose friends. You know, I've lost a lot of friends for doing the activism that I do, people who, you know, just can't stand to look at me because I disagree with something that they agree with. And so it is scary, and it is a big sacrifice in a lot of ways to become an activist for any issue, you know, any issue at all, not just animal rights. And, you know, I like to tell people, if you saw a puppy being beaten right in front of you, would you do something? Probably would. So why wouldn't you do something if that little puppy was a piglet or a chicken and you couldn't see them? Why won't you do the same thing for that animal? Because we're all the same. We're just in different bodies. We all just look different, but there's really no difference in a piglet and a puppy. They both want to live. They both don't want to feel pain. So if you would put yourself on the line for a puppy right in front of you, do the same thing for that piglet who is being beaten against concrete at a factory farm right now. And I think that's kind of one of the things that really, you know, puts things into perspective for people. And another big thing is just, you know, being able to walk the walk. Because if people see me asking them to take action and I'm not doing it, they're not going to want to do it. So going out there and putting myself on the line and saying, you don't have to even do, you know, as, you know, risky of something that I'm doing. You can just stand on the sidewalk with a sign, but, you know, maybe I'm out there getting arrested, and the least you can do is stand out there with a sign. And that's something that I think helps people feel more motivated.
Got it. Now, you also, beyond the signs, beyond getting arrested, you know, to make real change, it has to happen at the higher levels, if you will. So what are you doing to get connected there so that you can make that impact?
Yeah, so we're kind of been starting, especially in Direct Action Everywhere, which is the grassroots animal rights I work with. We've been kind of starting with things that we think the public at large and our legislators already probably agree with, such as banning fur. So we recently actually banned fur in the entire state of California. So fur sales are going to be illegal in a few years, because that passed just a couple months ago. We passed this historic legislation. California is now the first state in the country to ban the sale of fur. And
Wow.
you know, we started this campaign a few years ago with banning fur in Berkeley, California, which is, you know, a very progressive place. And we thought, okay, this is a good place to start to show that it can be done. And then we moved to San Francisco and LA, and now the entire state. And now other states are following in California's footsteps and trying to ban fur. And we're kind of started at something that's less controversial, and, you know, it's already been established that fur is cruel and unnecessary. Now we can kind of build on those relationships with legislators and go forward on maybe things that people aren't, you know, necessarily already behind, such as, you know, giving the animals the right to be rescued when they're collapsed on the floor of a factory farm. That's something that's more controversial because, you know, of the power behind animal agriculture. You know, we have a lot of activists facing felony charges for rescuing animals who, you know, I actually care for at my sanctuary. For rescuing them, they're facing felony charges when these animals would be dead if they hadn't, you know, gone in and taken these animals out. And so one of the our next steps, next campaigns that we're trying to move forward on is making sure that it's very clear that animals have the right to be rescued when they are on death's door on the floor of a factory farm or any abusive situation.
Got it. Yeah. Now, you mentioned Direct Action Everywhere. So tell us about that organization and how they support you as an activist.
Yeah, so Direct Action Everywhere is an international group of animal rights activists taking direct action for animal liberation. And they were founded back in 2013, and I actually learned about them early on in my activism career, I think I was about 12 years old when I first saw them, and I was so inspired because I saw people finally like not afraid to say the things that, you know, I felt so strongly about, people not afraid to say that animals don't deserve to go through these things. And seeing just such a bold message was really inspiring to me, and it honestly brought me to tears. And I began just like following every little thing that went up on their Facebook page. And then one day, seeing that I'd been sharing a lot of their content, one of the organizers at Direct Action Everywhere reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to get involved. And I did. And today I'm actually their social media coordinator. So while, you know, a few years ago I was obsessively following their Facebook page, I now manage that page of over 300,000 people. So, you know, it all came full circle, and I'm really grateful to be a part of that group.
Wow. Wow, your rooster in the back really does want to be heard on this podcast. I get photo bombed by my cat on my podcast, and you're getting photo. That's a new one. We're getting vocally bombed by a rooster in the background. That's hilarious. So when you talk about this idea, so our listeners are, they're wanting to start a movement.
Yeah.
So you got connected to Direct Action Everywhere. You're already starting your own and doing your thing and getting out there and hoping that people would come along board with you. And then you got connected to this larger organization. And how many people are actually in, like with you, are supporting Happy Hen? And, are they volunteers? Are you paying them to be part of that, to support like your sanctuary and what all the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so we do have volunteers, but we ultimately day to day, are managed by employees because of the kind of the nature of sanctuary work. We have to make sure that no matter what, we have reliable people here to take care of the animals. So we have about 5 employees who work here, taking care of the animals and making sure that they're all, getting food and water, and every single barn on this property has to get cleaned every single day to make sure that they have a healthy environment to live in. And, in addition to that, we have volunteers who come and help out with bigger projects, and, we'll be coordinating rescues across California and sometimes even across the country, and we'll have to mobilize volunteers to transport them. Actually, tomorrow I'm flying to Utah, and myself and a volunteer are going to be driving 10 turkeys who are rescuing from a slaughterhouse back to California early next week. So, being able to have that network to call upon when we have an opportunity like that to rescue turkeys is just so valuable. Because I know that if anything ever happens and there's ever an urgent situation, there are so many people who, would be excited to help and who are just as passionate about this as we are, and, want to take that opportunity to help an animal.
So I've got to ask the question. So your animals you rescue these turkeys, and at the time of this recording, this is just before Thanksgiving. Yeah. So, so you are rescuing these turkeys. Do you get a sense from them that they actually know what you're doing?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I think.
Or are they like, who are you, and get away from me?
Yeah, it's always different, and it depends on like the animal circumstance, and various animals, have various levels of trust towards humans already. I think when we walk into a slaughterhouse and there's animals, on the kill floor, they know what's about to happen to them. They know that they're about to die. So if we come in and we pick them up, they think we're going to kill them because, they're watching other humans kill their friends right in front of them, and they're just assuming they're next, right? Just like any of us would. So then, when we take them out, instead of killing them, they kind of, you can feel their bodies kind of start to relax because they realize, oh, like, I'm not going to go through that. That's not going to be me. And, then they slowly kind of start to learn to trust and learn that not all humans are going to hurt them, and that they, do have a second chance at life.
Yeah. Well, you see on Facebook, you see these beautiful videos and photos of animals that, their rescuer, they just are like a magnet to them, and they don't want to leave them and so forth, because they know that they rescued them. It's so amazing. So
Yeah.
let's talk about, speaking of Facebook, let's talk about funding. How are
Yeah.
you funding this initiative? It costs money to go fly, and go pick up turkeys and bring them back and run a sanctuary.
Yes, it's definitely expensive, and financial concerns are often the biggest burden to running any organization. And Facebook fundraising is a tool that was added to Facebook a few years ago, and it has been probably the most valuable fundraising platform that I've ever used. And I know a lot of other organizations feel the same way. That they basically built something where you can reach a lot more people than other fundraising platforms, and I've been able to raise tens of thousands of dollars just through Facebook alone. And then in addition, we get grants from other organizations. Direct Action Everywhere has given us grants to take care of animals, as well as others, and that has been really crucial to sustaining the work that we're doing.
So that is amazing. Actually, one of the beautiful things about that is that, and it's smart, because those, the people, the donors are already on Facebook. And so if you can go where they are, as opposed to some other platform, which they may never see,
Right.
or maybe they won't think to check it on a regular basis. Here they're on Facebook all the time. And I oftentimes will see that when I'm creating a post for this podcast,
Yeah.
where, people will be talking about something that they're passionate about, and funding is important. And so it'll say, would you like to add a donate button? And so it's becoming so much more common. Of course, people do it for their birthdays as well. So that is great. Now, in terms of grants, how did you find out? I know partly through Direct Action Everywhere, but otherwise, how did you find out about these grants? Because I know that's a big question that I get from people who will say, where do I even go to find what is even available to me, let alone applying for the grant and hopefully getting it?
Yeah, so there are a lot of organizations that solely give grants. That is their purpose. That is, what they do, is they give grants to other organizations, and specifically towards projects that other organizations are working on. So, say we have a potential rescue we could do, but we need to build a $3,000 barn. We could reach out to that grant organization and say, this is the project, this is the impact this project's going to have, this is why it's important, and this is how much money we need. And that's kind of the best way to approach these grant organizations. But I guess in terms of finding them too, you can honestly just, whatever your issue is, whatever your organization is about, there's probably a grant organization specific to your issue that would give grants, especially to an organization like yours.
So you just Google it?
Yeah, you can just Google it. I mean, there's, I've just Googled, organizations that support animal rights that give grants, and, we'll find, there's an organization called the Well-Fed World, and they give grants. They've given us a grant in the past, and they, help people who are fighting for animals, and who are the two issues that they give grants for are animal rights and world hunger issues. So if you're either of those two issues, you can apply for a grant, and they'll probably give you one.
That is great. So let's talk about effective activism.
Yeah.
What is effective and what is not effective? Because some activism just kind of like falls flat on its face, and then other, it's true, and other ones really catch fire. Part of it, is it timing? Is it what's happening in the news at the same time? Or is it specific strategies, ways that you do it, like you're doing something that works?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of those things. I mean, whether it catches on with the media is obviously a big thing. And if it's something more relevant and timely, it's more likely to. But I think ultimately, as far as just being able to have a movement long-term that's going to be successful doing activism, it does mostly come down to strategy. And we've at Direct Action Everywhere, we kind of have based most of the things that we do off of past social justice movements, and the teachings of Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, Emmeline Pankhurst, and kind of their philosophies towards activism, because they're all people who've led movements that were successful, that did succeed. And there are also a lot of really amazing studies. Erica Chenoweth is a social scientist. She's come up with this number of 3.5%, where if you can mobilize 3.5% of the population to take nonviolent direct action, you will win. And there's never been a movement in history that has mobilized at least 3.5% of the population and not won. So, there's definitely information and tools like that we use. And the movement that I honestly look at the most is probably the women's rights movement, the women's suffrage movement in the UK, led by Emmeline Pankhurst in the early 1900s. And they used some incredible direct action techniques and literally forced the government to take their issues seriously, to the point, the government had no choice, because they were causing, so much mayhem. Like they were blowing up all the mailboxes, and people couldn't deliver letters. They were breaking windows at all the stores, and literally the society was not going to be able to function in England, without the economy was just going to be destroyed. Everything was going to be destroyed if they did not give women the right to vote. So that's kind of ultimately how women got the right to vote, is that they just basically forced the government to take them seriously. And I think, I'm not necessarily going to go blow up mailboxes or break windows, but I think that that's kind of like an important idea of, forcing in some way or another, whether it's by destroying someone's or a company's reputation, in one way or another, forcing them to do something that's right, even though it doesn't benefit them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nonviolent, and then there's violent activism, and then there's the violence in the sense of against another person, but also then violence against property and so forth. Really interesting. I was thinking about what you said there in terms of the percentage. It's much lower than when I was searching, critical mass. How do you get to critical mass? If you Google that, it'll say 10%. Which what you're saying is actually a lot less than that. So you can, because sometimes if it feels too daunting, people say, well, like, how are we even going to do that? But then there are these stories like, wow, they actually did do it. And so if we make enough noise, if we create enough awareness, then we can actually get things changed. Now, what's your vision? So I know that's kind of hard. Like, you're 17 years old and you've lived a lot of life, though, and certainly for beyond what most 17-year-olds have. But when you look at your future, what do you see? Like, what are you going for? You've got this sanctuary. Do you want to grow the sanctuary? Do you want, like, what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to keep the sanctuary going and kind of make this sanctuary, in a way, a blueprint for the future. What we want the future of animals in our society to look like. How do we want animals to live? How do we want animals to be treated? I want this to kind of be that shining example. And just kind of going broader than that, I think ultimately we want to pass an animal bill of rights in the U.S. Constitution, have a constitutional amendment for animal rights that gives animals the right to their own lives, and we don't have the right to own them and have dominion over them anymore. And we've kind of started introducing that idea slowly the past few months. Actually, we're fighting for an animal bill of rights which we've named Rose's Law, actually on behalf of a little hen who we rescued from a factory farm called Petaluma Poultry, and Rose was collapsed in her own feces. She was dying, and the activists who took her out are facing felony charges for saving her. And she lived with me for about a year. She just passed away about a month ago. And she was my best friend in the whole world. We would watch movies together, go grocery shopping together, go to lunch together. She was just such an amazing individual. And on behalf of her, we've basically, she, this little hen, has inspired a global movement for animal rights, and people all across the world have been chaining themselves to government buildings and to other establishments to demand Rose's law, and it's created kind of national attention towards this idea of a Bill of Rights for animals.
Wow. And I know some people are going to be listening to this and thinking, I don't agree with that.
Yeah,
Keep in mind that this episode is part of a series on how to start a movement. So whether you agree or not, you can learn so much from what Zoe is sharing here. Now, so the vision of this Bill of Rights would ultimately mean, you say, like, we don't have dominion over animals and so forth. What do they just run free? We don't have pets anymore. Like, what's my cat, for example, who's so precious, right? Sleeping right there right now in the sun. So does that mean he just runs free?
I wouldn't say so. I think, we have domesticated animals and there's wild animals. Domesticated animals can't survive in the wild, right?
My cat has never been outside. And I adopted him when he was 3, and that was already something, like, for the first 3 years. And I thought, if he's never been outside for 3 years, he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
He'll get run over or eaten or something.
Yeah, definitely. And, we have dogs and cats here, and, all of our domesticated animals, they can't completely be free, right? We can give them as much freedom as we can, but we ultimately have to keep them safe, given that they're not accustomed to living in the wild. They're maybe not accustomed to cars or predators or whatever it is, or finding food on their own. And I think we do have a responsibility to care for and provide for domesticated animals. But I also think that we can stop breeding them, because ultimately domesticated animals exist because we have bred them into existence. And I think, anywhere humans and animals are kind of, where humans kind of have a control over an animal, most of the time it doesn't work out in the favor of the animals, at least in a lot of cases. And I think, we have to stop breeding these animals, and we, care for the ones that we have, care for the animals who are already in existence, help the animals in the shelters, help the animals who've already been bred into this world, because, they obviously deserve care, and stop breeding them. And then wild animals, obviously leave them alone, let them be part of the ecosystem and live their lives.
Got it. Yeah. And you know what? I mean, it's a radical thought. It is a radical thought to do that, and what that looks like. Now, absolutely. I think that anybody, like you said earlier, if anybody was to see a video, and we've seen that on Facebook, social media certainly shares a lot of that, where you see this cruelty to animals, and I can't even look at it. Like, it's just horrible that anyone would do this to, whether it be a dog, or, you see a lot of the dogs being beaten, or any other animal, like you said, pigs and chickens and all this. So, wow. Yeah. Well, we'll see it'll be interesting to see in the next number of years. Do you have a vision, like a timeline, where your goal by this time? Is there a specific date?
Yeah. So we have a 40-year roadmap to animal liberation. So we believe that we can pass, just kind of basing off the timelines of past movements that have had bold visions like this, that, there is a time then gay rights was totally radical. No one thought it would ever happen. And 30 years later, gay marriage was legal in the entire country. The movement had already only been alive for 30 years, and that completely transformed the world for gay people. And we believe that in about 40 years, we can probably pass an animal Bill of Rights. And kind of along the roadmap, we have other goals, such as, making making it so that all animal products have to give an honest description, or maybe even a photo of where the animals are coming from, rather than, these false labels like humane and cage free, even though we know that, these facilities are just as bad as any other factory farm. We want to give people the right to know, right? The right to know where their food is coming from. Other little goals would be like, banning the sale of meat in one city like Berkeley, which is a progressive hub, and then kind of taking these incremental steps, and ultimately, hopefully, getting to our broader vision of animal rights.
So how do you change? This is the challenge of any movement, right? And I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. It's like, how do you reconcile people who say, no, I like meat, or I even need it to survive, right? Because, there's that belief. And then there is what you believe. And so how do you see that reconciling where, and this is a tough question, you may or may not want to, or have an answer for it, but the movement that you have actually goes against somebody else's movement, if you will.
Yeah.
So how do you figure out which one is the right movement, or the one that's going to win over? Is it just simply by numbers, or?
Yeah, well, there's actually something, I believe it was developed actually by Martin Luther King Jr., but it's called the spectrum of allies. So you have the people who are taking action, who believe in the issue. Those are your active allies. So people who, in the case of the animal rights movement, that's animal rights activists. Then you have passive allies, the people who agree with you and, aren't really taking action. And then you have people who are neutral, people who don't really pick a side. Then you have, passive opponents and people who disagree with you but aren't doing anything about it. And then you have active opponents, people who disagree with you and are doing something about it. And basically, in any movement, you want to shift the spectrum over one. So make all the passive allies active allies. Make all of the neutral passive allies, and then make all of the active opponents passive opponents. So then, you kind of just have this little sliver of people who disagree but don't really want to voice it, because it's kind of, it's like, oh, those people want to kill animals. We don't really want to, it's kind of, that's taboo now, right? And then, you've kind of built this movement and of active people voicing this and normalizing an idea, normalizing the idea that it's wrong to kill animals, or normalizing the idea that, everyone should be able to love who they want to love, or that women have the right to vote. You kind of normalized that and denormalized the opposite side.
Got it. So thank you for that. That's actually really, really helpful. Where you mentioned about that coming from Martin Luther King. Was that in a book or some kind of resource?
I think it's in his, he kind of created this whole system of nonviolence. And I think it's Kingian nonviolence. And that's kind of part of that is the spectrum of allies.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. This has been great, Zoe. Thank you. And thank you to your rooster in the back, who's now quiet, but that was hanging out with us for a while, giving people a really visceral experience with what it's like to live on a sanctuary. It's awesome. Well, for our listeners, I would encourage you to go to happyhen.org to find out what Zoe's doing. Of course, you can also Google Direct Action Everywhere. We'll make sure this is all in the show notes so that you can connect with Zoe. You can learn more about what she's doing. Hopefully not send her hate mail. She, I'm sure, has enough of that. And don't be sending in her any threats, please, if you don't agree. We want her to be safe too. And so, and having the freedom to believe what she believes and to do the work that she believes to do. So with that, if you have comments and you want to support what she's doing, then you can also find her on social. We'll make sure that, as I said, all those links will be in the show notes. Final thoughts for our listeners. Zoe, if there's anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately, in the end of the day, whether you agree with animal rights or not, whatever you do believe in, I hope that everyone will go out there and stand up for it, because we have enough silence in our society. We have enough people being silent about things that matter. And there's actually a Martin Luther King Jr. quote that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So let's all speak out about whatever issues that we're facing or that we see others facing, and make the world a better place.
Well said. Thank you so very much. You're amazing. Oh my goodness. Like, I keep forgetting. I'm like, that's right. She's 17 years old, and you're just literally just getting started in warming up in this journey. So it'll be exciting. Maybe we'll have you back in a number of years.
Yeah.
I'm still doing this podcast and be able to get an update from that, but we'll definitely be watching. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, appreciate your parents for supporting you, and for your dad for recommending you. And to our listeners, I believe that, and this is so appropriate, we talk about direct action everywhere. I believe that leaders of transformation take action. So what you heard today, there was so many valuable insights from what Zoe shared. So if this is something that you're passionate about, do something about it. Don't be silent. As she finished off and said so eloquently, don't be silent anymore about the things that are important to you. Take action today. Do something to take at least if it's one step forward in that, rather than putting it off and hoping that one day, you'll have the time, the money, the energy, the support to do it. Start now and trust that will come. We'd love to hear your stories. We'd love to hear what you're up to. And so you can find us on social, and you can also go to our website at leadersoftransformation.com, and you can reach out to me through that. And we look forward to hearing what you're up to, what you're planning to do. And if there's a way that we can support you in that, then please let us know. With over 300 guests that we've had on this show, we have a great resource base of people that are experts in different arenas that can, I'm sure, help you in what it is that you're looking to do. So we'd love to be able to support you in that. And we look forward to seeing you soon again on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation. Have a great day.